Morning, everybody. So, 6 o'clock in the morning. Been working on this 2 days now. It's 2 parts to this video, so it's not super long. You need to watch it. Pay attention to what I'm showing you here. This is Project Looking Glass. And Phil Schneider, before he died in 1995. Listen to what this man says. Both of them. It'll blow your mind. This will tell you why every time you think things are going to be one way, they go a different route. It's hard to explain. You just have to see for yourself. But it's very real. Enjoy the video.
Kind of in a spacesuit, because all aliens, regardless benevolent or otherwise, they're carrying germs and diseases and bacterium in and on them that are deadly to us. If I were making policy, I'd quarantine them all, because how do we not know that some of our diseases like AIDS, Ebola, hantavirus, and a few of these other weird designer diseases, as I call them, are not made from the cadavers of some of these aliens as a biological weapon to use against the people of the United States? Well, I'm a tired American speaking out. Good question. Basically, they have taken over. All that's left is a bunch of screaming, a bunch of us that have been very complacent. Half of the 131 deep underground military bases are basic cities for them. Right underneath our feet is a macabre sight indeed. You can bet your bottom dollar they've already basically won the war. However, they're being an alien species. We are an alien species to them, and our germs have a tendency to kill them. They're also a dying race, and they're in far worse condition than anybody with the worst case of terminal cancer. They are in need of us to some degree.
looking glass shows probabilities, or has shown probabilities. The cube would react with the people present. So there was an alteration, if you will, over what you were seeing from it. They are decommissioned. They are separated into their three components. There's a projection component, a ring component, and also a barrel component to both the Stargate devices as well as the looking glass device. The Stargates also have field posts, and again, I'm not a physicist, so I wouldn't be the appropriate one to make comment as to how they work. But there were field posts that were positioned around the actual gates, and they have been stored, I guess. I'm not certain what happened to the field components, but of the three components, they've actually been decommissioned, and liaisons to the European Union, the United Nations, and NATO are actually in possession of them. And there is no one group which has the other one of the other two components. It draws off from a natural ERB, an Einstein-Rosen bridge.
Okay.
It accesses it and somehow works, from what I understand, not in parallel, but almost like piggybacks on the energy of the natural Stargate. They were usually worked in tandem. It required a second looking glass to be turned on at the same time to get acoustics or sound, if you will, from whatever the people were watching, but to go to piggyback in tandem with the visual response of the equipment. That it required two to be turned on to hear anything. The original device was the Stargate device. That was then increased in power, if you will, with the use of these field posts to stabilize the doorway, if you will, to step through into another location,
right.
Which in essence, because distance and time are relative, the same thing, step two into another time. The looking glass device was a back-engineered Stargate.
Okay.
So it was actually back-engineered from the original cylinder seal data, which allowed us to produce the Stargate access devices, if you will, what we call the Stargates. It's a back-engineered device, the looking glass is. So the looking glass is a secondary device, and it was coming into its fore in the 60s and 70s. That's when they started actually being showing a lot of interest in actually building the equipment to be able to see over the curvature of time-space so that they could see into the future and somewhat into the past, but basically the future. The looking glass shows probabilities, or has shown probabilities. The cube would react with the people present. So there was an alteration, if you will, over what you were seeing from it. It would actually spin out as a yellow disc out of the top of it, where the word yellow book originally came from.
Yeah.
And depending upon what predisposition, it's kind of like little Yoda telling young Luke, you bring in there what you have with you. You know, whatever is in there is what you bring. You could then change the perspective, the tilt, if you will, the orientation or angle of the information being presented back to you. So unless you are well prepared to deal with such a thing, human interaction and human emotions bring instability of the provenance of the information. The situations involving the treaties, their outcomes, the actual potential for both timeline number 1 and timeline number 2 outcomes. In the case that we're in right now, we seem to be in a variant of timeline 1, and that's good. For everything that I've seen and have read and reported to me concerning timeline number 1, it's not happening exactly the way that they figured that it would. But then again, it couldn't, because we've made changes along the way, which diverted us away from timeline number 2. And in so doing, our future, again, I regard our future as something which is pretty much a blank slate. We're writing it for ourselves. And so we are now seeing something coming to pass which is slightly different than the prognostication, than the probabilities that we were seeing. It has been used since actually the 50s by the potentates, by the leaders of the various countries to skew the history.
Wow, that's amazing.
of the human race. And the common folk, the average people, all of us, have a right to a future which is our own, and not being skewed and designated and promulgated and promoted and provoked by blue bloods who feel that they are above everyone else.
And a looking glass is not the same as a Stargate.
No, a looking glass is a back-engineered form from the original cylinder seal descriptions on how to build the units that they made Stargate. So in essence, you could take a looking glass
Yes.
unit and make a couple changes to the equipment,
Okay.
lift it up on an angle,
Okay.
put field posts around it, and open up a hole to step through.
Sure. Okay, but the looking glass can show you the future. So are we saying
Future
that there were-
probabilities, not the future. The position of the rings, their orientation, the energy running through them, position of the barrel, etc. Because you can raise the barrel up on an armature inside the center of it. All come into play as if you have an onion with the various layers of the onion. As you move through the different energy levels, you also move through the different layers, so you get different bits of information. Now imagine an almost infinite number of layers overlain in comparison to the positions of the rings, and an almost infinite amount of energy that you can add or subtract. Tuning it up, tuning it down.
Well, it sounds
Instead of going up by 1 hertz or by 2 hertz, maybe by a thousandth of a hertz, up and
Okay,
down.
you
The technology
close
is not
down-
being used at all right now.
Okay, but the reason it's not used now is because of where we're going into the galactic, the plane of the...
As of about 2017, I would expect probably that all of these little pieces of equipment will probably all get reassembled, yeah.
turned back on.
Oh, sure.
2017? That's quite a while.
2016,
Oh,
2017,
not until then.
probably not. The so-called cycle of catastrophe or season of catastrophe of Falconelli, the time period from, right around 1992 to right around 2012, right around that area. While we will have passed it, past 2012, we really ought to get through the entire cycle, which is about 1980 to about 2016, to feel confident that the interpretation from the timeline from the future about their own catastrophe is not off by a few years. We're talking about 45,000 years or 52,000 years respectively. We have difficulty understanding what happened 2,000 years ago. And we're talking about 50,000 years here. So it's very wise for them to wait.
The looking glasses are now decommissioned, but also the Stargate technology.
Yeah, they're decommissioned, and the Stargates and the looking glasses, I'm sure they're all in their little mothballed containers and all of that, and they have been separated. The 3 components of each have been separated and moved to different power structures, diplomatic and military authorities in the world. And we're talking about the EU specifically, the UN and NATO. Those are in specific control of one of the 3 components each.
Know that I have not hesitated to preach anything that would be helpful to you, but have taught you publicly and from house to house.
There has been an awakening. Have you felt it?
I'm Phil Schneider. I spent 17 years in black budget programs, government geologist, as engineer, structural engineer with aerospace applications. Self-taught metallurgist, became kind of famous in my own right. I basically would have a set of notes here, but they're unavailable in all this melee. Up here I have different artifacts explaining some of them are alien metals that have been produced both on this planet and the confines of outer space that are now used in all stealth aircraft. All stealth aircraft, for instance, all black jets, what you're seeing of black helicopters and the like, the skins and the coatings and the residues that are used predominantly in the aircraft themselves, in the airframes and the rotor blades and the fans, and in some cases in submarines, special titanium hulls in the Phoenix class submarines now. All this has come from alien technology. 1947 is what the public has been told. Something crashed in the backyard in New Mexico, a place called Roswell, New Mexico. Unfortunately, that's what the public's been told. The military's known about the alien question for the better part of 70 years, and they first saw their glimpse of what was going on as early as 1909 in the American Southwest. Now, Army cavalry evidently were chasing some bandits, and they entered this cave. They were holed up in a cave, and what they found in there was flying discs and little gray guys and all kinds of weird things, and they didn't know how to explain that, and they wrote them down as best they could, and it's been in secret archives ever since. That's up down by the Truth or Consequences area of New Mexico. Well, the alien thing is more than just what I'd call a non-visible threat. We on the surface, first of all information dealing with alien or alien reproduced technology or alien reproduced vehicles or any other kinds of things well hidden from the American public. Our black budget, for instance, garners $1.023 trillion every 2 years. It's over $500 billion a year. Right now, there are 131 active deep underground military bases in the United States. There's 1,477 of them worldwide. Each one has an average cost of $17 to $19 billion. Each one is built in the site. It used to it'd take a year to 2 years to build each one, and now they're capable of building a couple of them a year with sophisticated methods. My colleague Al Bielek has actually been on some of the high-speed railways, the magneto-leviton trains that connect all the deep underground military bases within the United States. He's been on a Mach 2 train and floats off of a single rail at 3/4 of an inch off the rail, and is what you'd call high tech. We have nothing like this on the surface. The public basically has been totally lied to. We're considered stupid or even moronic in some cases. It's got to stop. If we're going to gain our country back, we must, and I repeat, must instill in our public officials, anybody that goes and does public service, they must tell us the truth. If they cannot do this, then they must be impeached, or they must be removed from office. If this cannot occur, if the truth cannot totally come out, there are reasons for secrecy, for instance, but if the truth cannot totally come out, what's the use in us having anything called freedom? Okay, now I have pictures here that I'm going to show you during the break and artifacts, and I ask you to kind of look at them but not handle them. I have actual crashed retriever metal from Roswell, New Mexico. It's given to me when I was 14 years old. For instance, I've got other things. I've got pieces This piece of titanium, a special titanium alloy made for everything from the original SR-71 Blackberry, that's old hat now. F-117A is their old hat now. They're making a whole new class of hypersonic above Mach 5 aircraft that employ extremely modern charged particle beam weapons. They don't even use lasers anymore. Computer-enhanced imaging radar, although it's used in helicopters for public surveillance, computer-enhanced imaging radar, and in satellite technology. The brand new kid on the block is a kind of infrared technology where a satellite 150,000 miles out in a geosynchronous orbit, or not quite geosynchronous orbit, but these spy satellites can literally look in and see a dime on the floor, say on your kitchen floor. They have a resolution factor of 99.999961. This particular piece of metal, I'm going to drop it on the floor here, it'll kind of ring like a bell. You can't break it. Withstand temperatures in excess of 7,500 degrees Fahrenheit. It has niobium in it. It also has mironite in it, element 123. Yeah, please do. It's in a non-crystalline form. This is just kind of a dripping out of the main crucible. Here's a crystalline example. It's in the scalenohedral-crystalline form. We got this from the large grays technology. This is grown in the confines of outer space, which has not quite a super vacuum, but by the way, this is capable of withstanding temperatures in excess of 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's great for certain parts of aircraft. This kind of material I work with on a daily basis. Up here we have a transparency of Groom Lake. Groom Lake is where the infamous Area 51, S4, S2, a CIA base, it was originally a bombing range, a nuclear test site. It was later become the most secret base in the United States. It employs over 18,000 workers who work in shifts of 12 hours at a whack. Most of them work in the cover of darkness, like us. We built out 9 underground military bases there, each with an average capacity capable was basically a city underground, roughly 4¼ cubic miles hollowed out underground. They have boring machines, for instance. They don't bore, they literally vitrify and melt the rock, deflagrate the rock. It's a very sophisticated laser melting and deflagrating system. It reduces the rock to a powder and then melts the remaining rock as a coating on the inside of the base, so you don't have to use gunite cements and other kinds of things like that. That's all old hat now. Technology is just basically the new technology we get is the old hat of the military. I'm going to be real brief about it. I carried a level 1 security clearance, the Rhyolite 38 Factor. There are very few of us. There's nobody except myself, to my knowledge, talking like this. Nobody. I'm breaking the law. I'm breaking world as well as federal law. I'm coming out and even talking about this to a group of people. I love my country more than I love my life. 2 weeks ago, I was shot in the shoulder. I don't want to gore you women out, but I was shot in the shoulder up here. I recently have become friends of a retired FBI agent who took me under the wing. He says, I've never seen a person braver than you. And I said, well, there's more coming. Our patriot movement in these United States is going to pick up the ball, and we are going to kick the parasites out. First of all, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, a few other founding fathers, Patrick Henry to mention a few, all had visions that these United States is going to live 700 years from where they were standing, and that was somewhere around the the late 1700s, early 1800s. So you can count this country isn't going to go to a new world order. I believe firmly in constitutional law. I'm not very well skilled in it, and that's my embarrassment. But I'm going to be real blunt about it. The government that is now instilled in ruling over us are ruling as we're serfs and they're the kings and queens. Now, that's a feudal system. That isn't even a democracy. We are now being ruled by an autocracy and a technocracy. In other words, technical knowledge as rules as king, with a feudal type system. Feudal systems haven't been used in the last 350 years, and they're coming back like gangbusters. If we are complacent, if we do not speak out in droves, and I'm not just talking about me, I'm talking about a bunch of us getting together and getting on this stump and loving our country more than we love our lives, getting on, some of us are going to get killed. I almost got killed a couple of weeks ago. Hadn't been for an FBI, a retired FBI man who risked his life, his career, everything, put it all on the line, and he didn't know me from Adam. A week prior to that, he listened to one of my tapes I gave up in Post Falls, Idaho, and I'm going to be very blunt about, he said that we need a lot more of you, but unfortunately we're not getting anybody. Well, I'm not the best speaker in the world, but I'm trying to relay to you that we need to get out and seriously get the message out. These shows are great. This hall should be absolutely packed, standing room only, and we should be getting the message out to as many people as we can with as many shows as there is it possibly to reach. The many is the public. We ought to get on talk shows. We've got to get on news shows and TV shows, and we have to really get the message out. And I think we're doing it, but it's a little bit slow in the first part. That's just that part of what I want to say. In working with the black projects, I was very loyal. And I was picked because I was very strong mentally. There's a bunch of us that were picked because we don't crack under pressure. We don't freak under pressure, so to speak. Everyday events don't bother us. Now, I was involved in something very controversial, almost totally unbelievable to most of you. Some of you are religious people. I think all religions have a time and a place, and they definitely have a place in America. Now, another thing I want to reach to you is that during the unbelievable part, I was involved in building another base inside of Dulce, New Mexico, which is Los Alamos Laboratory. It's a biological laboratory. On the southwest part of the Archuleta Mesa, we built an underground facility, a better part of 3 cubic miles hollowed out underground. Then to the southwest of that, we were in the process of the early stages of building. We drilled 4 large tunnel-like holes. Some of them ran 2.5 miles under the surface. Number of the original wells or drilling machines that were used were at the rate of 2 miles a day. It was fairly rapid. The equipment kept coming up broken. So we wanted to go down, we wanted to send somebody down there, a human observer, or human observers in this case, to find out what was going on. Well, to our total surprise, first of all, the government knew all about it. They didn't tell anybody. When I saw Green Beret and Black Beret people encamped inside of our geologist camp, I knew something was up. The gig was up. First of all,